Welcome to day 4 in the Stamp Camp week of Webisodes. Now, earlier in the week, I think on Tuesday, we talked about Stampendous' creative palette. Well, today we're going to take another look at Stampendous with their stamp sets and coordinating cutting dies.
We have some great looks for you. Large florals, butterflies, and a beautiful face. And we're going to show you how we put those all together.
Right, sound interesting?
Come play with us.
Well, here are the 3 sets. As you can see, they're in a row, and each of them has, as we said, the cutting dies with the coordinating stamps. Now, we're going to do them one at a time, so we're going to start with that set.
Start with this one. And this one is the Hydrangea Garden. So it's got this beautiful hydrangea floral double leaf set, a small leaf, and a butterfly.
Right, and then you can see the coordinating cutting dies. So we're going to get started on
I want to say that with this comes a free template too. With each stamp set, there's a free template that comes with it. So you can use that for masking off areas. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit.
We'll show it when we get into the project. So here is just that wonderful hydrangea blossom, one of my very favorite flowers, by the way. And as you can see, it just makes a very stunning focal. However, look deeper, and you can see that the background was stamped with that single blossom.
Right, so Debbie used blue cardstock and then a blue ink just to sort of ghost shadow those in that she just stamped all over there. And then on that huge blossom in the center, she stamped it several times and then cut out each individual piece so she could stack them on top of each other.
Yeah, let's bring the stamp set in just for a second, just to kind of look at that. So here is the huge cluster.
Right.
But what's nice is that they've given you a single blossom, which is the one that was stamped around the background. But that way you can do that multiple times and then do some layering. And you can see how these have been lifted with foam tape, but they've also, some of the petals have been curved back.
Right.
The thing that really strikes me is the coloring, and it looks so detailed, and yet it's so easy.
So simple. So first of all, she started off on cardstock that would match what she wanted to do. So this is yellow cardstock, this is green cardstock. And Debbie stamped on the cardstock just like that. So I've used a black StazOn, inked it up, and went ahead and stamped it. And then she used the green and yellow watercolor pencils.
Okay, let me just show you the assortment. So this is how they come, just in case you haven't seen them. And there are 9 of them, including a paintbrush, so
including
that's nice too.
a detailed brush so that you can get those watercolors wet and move them around. And I'm going to show you a little bit about how to do that. So she started with here's a number 108 from the yellow set, and all she did was went around the inner and the outer edges of those flowers so that she got an outline within the petal and then around the inner parts as well. So that just gives you a little extra. You've already got that yellow all going around the edges of all of them. So just put a couple of layers of that, and you don't have to be real delicate with it. You can just sort of scribble that on. And I'm just going to get a little bit of water here, or you can use, you know, a cup of water, whatever. Just get some water on a brush and then just start moving that around a little bit. And that blends it right in.
Right, so it's just going to soften those edges. And this is my favorite kind of thing, something that looks really involved and is so easy.
Oh, sure. So there, I've just moved it around. You can add more if you like, make it a little darker. After it's wet, you can even add a little bit more. The watercolor pencils are great for adding depth and color and blending. And so that's how she did that portion of it.
And then you're going to show the cutting die?
Then I'm going to show the cutting die. So here's the cutting die that matches that stamp. And I'm going to move this craft sheet away. It's a little bit wet. And I'm going to start by lining it up, and then I'm going to use stencil tape to make sure that it's going to sit right where I want it. So it's made to go right around that stamp. You just go ahead and line it up. Another way to do this, if you wanted to try it, is to cut it out, use the cutting die, and then stamp over it.
If you wanted to try it, is your suggestion?
It's a little more difficult. But on these on the detailed edges, it's a little bit more difficult to line that stamp up with it, but it works just fine this way. Stamp it first, and that way, if you don't like what you stamped, you can Or you can try it again, you know, get the perfect stamp and then cut it out. I think it works best that way.
But you can see how that is absolutely a perfect fit. Now, we're using stencil tape. You could use washi tape, but what's nice about the stencil, well, actually both of them, is that they're not going to mar your paper.
Right. So I've got my Big Shot
Already?
cutting machine, die cutting machine. I'm going to set that. We have to do it up this way. We kind of keep these pristine that way.
Okay.
And run it through. Come on, get in there. There we go. Pull that out. I'm just going to pull those. Here,
Let me get that away from you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. And there's that piece, and I'm just going to remove it with the tape. I can take the tape off. See, it doesn't tear the paper, which is kind of the nice thing about it. And there's your piece that removes from the cutting die, and there you have that beautiful flower all ready to go.
Right. Now, we were talking about the stencil that comes with it, and one of the ways you can use it is to pop out the center, one of the center designs, and use it as a mask. And so if you wanted, excuse me, to put this on top, align it again, and thank you for bringing piece of paper over.
Sure.
And you had this on the front of your card or something, and you wanted to take an applicator, a sponge applicator with some ink, and maybe brush it around the edge to create kind of a halo.
Sure, you could do that.
You've got it, and you didn't have to create your own mask.
Or if you had stamped this on that cardstock and you didn't want to cut it out, say you wanted to use it on a scrapbook page, but you wanted more flowers around it, that's another thing you can do. You have this mask sitting on there, and you can just stamp again, and then you'll have the background of this stamp here. You can stamp over there. So they're great for that kind of masking. Also, and I think you could probably see it better with it off, is if you were to use this entire stencil piece, and I think I've got it backwards, but you lay it on top after you've done your stamping and mask off the area around it, then you could spray it and sort of color it that way.
If you want to do some misting or some...
So
and
there are lots of different options.
Right. There are also masks there for the other pieces. So going back to our card, this smile was done with the design tool number 2. And let's see, you can see that oval beautifully done right there with some dazzles inside. And Debbie just couldn't stop herself, but to pop that blue, she added the blue jewel dazzles in the flower centers.
And it's just perfect. Perfect little accent.
And inside, she has also used the design tool to create another label and then has placed more dazzles on it. So many reasons to be happy.
So
Smile.
simple inside after this beautiful pop floral. That reminds me of a seed packet.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just beautiful.
Now, for another look with the same set, here is another collection.
So go ahead and stamp on pattern paper, and this is the effect you can get. It's just gorgeous. And the flowers were stamped and cut out individually. The butterfly was stamped using the cutting die to cut that out, the leaves. And then each one of them was accented with Spectrum Noir pens.
Right, and then in the center, gold stickles were used. And I do love, now I do confess I'm an advocate of pattern paper, and this is out of the Bountiful collection. But what I love is the depth that it gives. So you just kind of see into the blossoms.
Without a lot of work. Most of the work has been done for you in that the color is there on the paper. So then you can you don't even have to accent if you don't want to with the Spectrum Noir, but I think it's a beautiful touch.
It's a great look. And this card is about a 5-inch square, and as we back up, you can see that one blossom was used down here.
Right, and Happy Thoughts from the gold Tiny Words and Phrases dazzles was placed on there.
And then on the inside, we have another of the butterflies, this time in green, and then a single blossom.
And this one, while it was stamped and cut out on green with that cutting die, it was colored in with the Spectrum Noir to just add a little bit more color.
So very different look. And of course, hydrangeas come naturally in so many colors. Okay, are you sitting down?
Okay.
I want to show you this. Scrapbookers, look at this beauty.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Isn't that?
Now, and that's because it's on vellum.
It is. Now let's get in close so we can see. And this is a little bit of what you were talking about, doing this on a scrapbook page, in that you can have this whole cluster. But as I go through here,
I love that you can see through that vellum to the next piece, that these are all just layered. These were embossed on vellum, and it was treated vellum. I'm going to show you how we treat that vellum first.
and there's a photograph.
Oh yeah, there's people.
Oh yeah, there's people there.
No,
So
it accents that photo
It does.
beautifully. That's the whole point of it. It's to add to it. So it's
and yet
just
I
gorgeous.
see some shimmery going on as I wiggle it.
Right. So there
and-
was an additional
Yeah.
touch. Added some embossing tinsel. What's it called? Vintage blue embossing
Right.
tinsel.
And it's funny because it looks silver in the package, but it is the blue, as you can see. So that's interesting.
I want to start with that, with the vellum, because it is,
Yeah.
you're seeing different colors. You're seeing a blue, you're seeing a green. And Debbie used just a standard vellum like this, and she added to it with the basic chalk set. So most people have basic chalks, and you can go ahead and color your vellum with that.
So you would do first your stamping and embossing and then go back and color it?
Oh, well, you could do that.
That's not what you're demonstrating.
No, you know what? I kind of like the idea of coloring it first, because if you
Okay.
emboss on it, then it's a little bumpy. And when
That's
you start
true.
to put the chalk, you actually put the chalk on the back,
Yeah.
so that it will reflect through. And there's a lot of other places on the page where the chalk is used.
Should we tell them why we're doing this?
Oh, that's up to you. I'm just gonna,
You're just going to color.
start coloring while
well,
you
what
talk.
happened is that the manufacturer of the colored vellum has discontinued them. So we wanted to make sure that in showing this lovely piece that we have options. And I think the chalking is just brilliant.
It is. It's just beautiful. And you're just going to move around,
Yeah.
and you're going to chalk the image. And she also did this. She used the colored vellum, or the chalk vellum in this case, for the wedding photo. So you could do this just around the
Right.
edges of the photo. You don't have to do the whole vellum. But that's the idea. You're just moving around and making sure that it's all colored. And there you have this beautiful blue vellum now. It's
And then you
tinted.
can do your heat embossing.
You can do your heat embossing, which I also would like to show you. So here's a
Okay.
piece that I went ahead and I colored
already
that
chalked
blue.
Yeah.
There, you can see that it's blue. It's been chalked. And I heat embossed it with white embossing powder. So I used Versamark, stamped the image, dusted it with a white embossing
This is
powder.
the superfine white embossing
Super
powder.
fine white
yeah.
embossing powder, and then I heat set it. And now I'm going to grab this totally versatile Versamarker, so that when you want to do detail stuff, this is the item to use. And then she went through just on the centers of those pieces, just to get a little Versamark.
Now,
on the
even though
center
it's
there.
on top of an area that's already been heat embossed, that's still going to work.
Right.
So,
And that gives something for this embossing tinsel to stick to. I'm going to put a little bit on there. I'm going to close up my Versamarker because it'll dry out otherwise. And then I'm going to shake that off, got on there, shake it off. So now you've got that right in the center. And all I have to do is heat emboss that again, just a little bit.
got it?
It shouldn't take much just to get that heated. Get it to turn a little bit, and there you go. It's already
That's
turned.
fast, yes.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful look that is. And I really wouldn't have never thought of that. So just doing one on top of the other, and then the layering of those pieces. And so she did do some individual pieces, not many, actually, only about 4.
You know, and those are the small flowers. So
Yeah.
she didn't like do the big one and cut it out. That's using the small flower
Right.
stamp and then the small flower cutting die.
And with vellum, of course, we love the translucent, but I also love how the colors shift when you put the green on top of the blue on top of the green. It just is a beautiful,
It's
beautiful look.
And then you can still see the photo through the vellum too. That's just gorgeous.
And this is another technique that I appreciate, is having some of the elements go into what we call the unused area of the photo. So it doesn't distract from anything, but it kind of incorporates both of them.
It
and
frames it more.
It does. does, doesn't it? And then that butterfly on a very soft color up in the corner, just lovely. And then this was done with the design toolkit #1.
Right.
So lots of things, but beautiful to do. Okay, well that's what we're going to do with the first set. Now we're going to move to our lady.
Okay.
And
our lady with the large flower.
Yes.
This is our Blossom Beauty. The Blossom Beauty stamp set, and then the cutting die that goes with it. This also contains a template within it that you can use for masking, and you'll see that. And for other uses, you'll see that in a little bit.
So here is our Carmen Miranda look. Isn't she just fun? Just really
just
gorgeous.
Exciting. Yeah.
And what I think is even more fun is this card. The top, her hat flips up, and then she's dreaming big.
So that's a really interesting look. That is the stamp there that you get. It looks like this when you stamp it. It has that edge on the top. And I love that this was set on these grapefruit paper papers, so that all of this is sort of coming out behind her. Maybe what she's thinking,
all of her dreaming, her big dreams.
Yeah.
Now this was stamped on this cardstock that is this the kind of this skin tone color, and then again on white.
Right. And I actually was going to show you, but I forgot to bring that one, darn it. And so so that's stamped on the flesh tone cardstock, and then stamped again on white, and just the eyes were cut out and set on top. And then a little bit more was added with Spectrum Noir, I think.
Right. And so there is her hat, and there are crystals in there, and these are the ones that are from Want to Scrap. So you can see that those in a variety of sizes are just going to work beautifully for earrings and for her blossoms.
For the blossoms on top there, that was done with gelatos, and I've got 2 sets here, yellow and red, and I've gone ahead and pulled out an orange, a yellow, and a pink. And this is something where for the card it was actually stamped several times, and then pieces of the flower were cut out and stacked on top of each other, so you can get more of a layering effect. Even some of them were, let's pull it in for a second. So you can see how the size of that flower. So that's right in the center there, but she added more flowers behind here and here.
And with those multiple stampings, that's why you have multiple cutting dies, because this is the big blossom, this is that center area, and this is even further the center area.
So you've got a cutting die for each one of these. So you stamp it once, and then you use each of those cutting dies, one for the outer, one for the next size, one for the smaller.
Actually, I guess you would stamp it 1, 2, 3, 4 times in this case. Yeah.
So I'm going to start with, I think, I'm going to leave that here.
Okay, I'll leave that there.
Take a look at it. So I think she used a little bit of orange and yellow in the center. So I'm going to go ahead and add some orange here. And this is that, gelatos are always that fun process of just sort of start playing, just start to add it in. She did just put it in like this and then moved it around with her finger. So I'm going to add the orange, I'm going to add a little yellow to the outside of that. Well, she used a considerable more yellow, I'm seeing, but that's all right. It all
and you can talk
out
to yourself as you're coloring too, huh?
I always do. Just walk by my little spot any day and I'm humming or talking. Okay, there we've got
I love that combination of colors.
Yeah, isn't it beautiful?
So pretty, yeah.
And then Debbie said, with a wet finger, so I'm getting my finger wet over here.
A wet finger.
A wet finger instead of a baby wipe. I use baby wipes for this mainly, but she just sort of started moving it around with her finger.
Okay.
And you see that works too. Another idea is that baby wipe. I'll use that wrapped around my finger a little bit and just sort of blend it. It works great too, but this is working quite well. I get a little bit more water. It even works better. Look at that. Blends beautifully.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So play around, blend those colors, and see if you can.
And this is the complete set. So just so you can see, this is the red and the yellow, and there are 4 gelatos in each, and a paintbrush, because sometimes you need those, and then a little stamp. So, but with our Carmen, she's just festive and pretty. Now, for a totally different look, look at this. Now we've added hair to her.
And that is a fun process, and using that stencil comes in really handy here. So you've got a couple of different things going on. You've got that face, which I love that it's going off the edge of the card like that. And then you've also got this flower that has been lacquered. So we're going to show you a couple things. Let's start with the face. I've already stamped it. So when you stamp it, this is what you get. That's how it ends up.
Right.
And then, and also I want to mention that Lene stamped this in brown. It gives it a much subtler look, but I've got it here in black. Then you can take that stencil here, which you can see. This is what I'm going to do to get the top of that. And I can take
to complete
the
her
outside.
head.
Yeah, to complete her head. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. It's a pretty simple process.
And it's also going to give you a neck, as well as the top of her head is going to give you a neck.
A little bit more if you want to continue down on the bottom. And I'm going to line that up just like so. I'm lining up the ears, which you can't see. For sure, you cannot see that at all. But that stencil is lined up. I've lined up the ears. I've lined up the chin so that I can make sure that I know right where the top is going to be. And I've got my pencil, and I'm just going to extend around. This is just so that I know where to go when I want to add that hair on. I'm going to do it a little darker just so you can see it. Most likely I wouldn't do this too dark on my card. So now you've got that, and then you just go in with the browns, Spectrum Noir brown set. And I have, in this case, TN7 and GB8. And you're just going to start coloring it in.
Do you start with the part in the middle?
I start right in that area, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to bring her in. So the part is here, so that's staying a little more of the flesh color.
Right.
And then the bangs going forward. In this case, she has straight hair. And so
I think what I'm going to do is just sort of color it in first, even with the broad tip, just to get sort of an idea of where I'm going. And then I'm going to use the darker color on top of it.
Okay.
So if I start there, then when I lay down the finer lines of the brown, it'll have something to sit on top of.
Right.
I'm going to move up that part up the side. This is just fun to play with, and you can do it in little bits and come back and add up along the top, like so.
And you're just doing half because only half is on this card.
Right.
But you could certainly do the whole thing.
Right. And just sort of keep adding, and you can add more onto it, and just start moving down. You're going to move down to around her ear, and you want to add a little bit of depth behind her ear.
And then it goes, let me just lift this up. Let's see, so you can see it's going outside of her ear, just about, I'd say 1/4 of an inch, and then straight down, kind of curving in a bit.
So down. And plus she cut that out afterwards, so if you sort of got out further than you thought was necessary, then you could come back and cut that off. But I would just do something like that. You can go back and add in a little more of this if you want a little more highlights up here.
Or you could go with darker colors
yeah,
too.
add a little more red. I'm thinking that looks a little more red, like a little more red was added too.
Yeah, and then you just fill in here. So your girl can have hair, and you can make it curly. You can do anything you want. The other thing that's going on this card is the blossom. And what it was done is first it was stamped onto the pattern paper, then a layer of the crystal lacquer was spread on it with paintbrush.
Right.
But then the tip, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've got
So I'll stop.
So I've got it stamped on that pattern paper. That's from the Fresh Cut paper pack, and I've got crystal lacquer, and it was brushed on. So you can either like get a little puddle and brush it on, or what I'm going to do is put a little right onto the flower, and then I'm going to use a paintbrush to spread it around. So I'm just going to spread it around and brush it off too, because this is going to. You're going to allow this to dry. You're going to give it a little time to dry. It doesn't take very much to get it all spread around there.
And what it will do, it will reinforce the paper, but it also allows you to shape the blossom a little bit.
Right. So I mean, already you can see that it'll shape more, and you can, when it's dry, then you can shape it and curl it any way you want, but it works that way too.
Now the second layer is going to be with the nozzle tip, and that's just going to go around the outside edges and along the center veins of the blossoms.
I'm gonna, this is a little bit too This tip has been cut a little bit too, but you can just sort of follow along like that. I'm
Right.
doing it where you can see.
And of course, it's milky right now, but it will be clear when it dries.
Mhm.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Something like that.
Yeah. And then here is the finished result, is you're going to get those highlights, and it does a fun thing to the paper. It just almost changes the texture of it. And you can see some pearls, and there are some of the greeting dazzles down there. This is a smaller card, about 4.5 inches. Ooh, I love her green eyes. And then on the inside, a double layer of the blossoms.
That's just beautiful.
Same thing.
Now, I love that. It sort of makes it a little thicker. And I noticed that underneath here, she stamped again. She stamped the image underneath that gives it a nice outline.
Right, just to have that there. So nice going on. We have one more with this stamp set, and this is using, am I right? Is it still? Okay.
It's the same stamp set. We're not using the face on this one. We're just
Right.
using this one.
And this is the center step die cut card.
Kind of looks like a hibiscus or something like that.
Yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it? And so one has been done. Now this has been stamped on, the blossom has been stamped onto the Silky paper.
Yes.
And that paper is especially designed so that if you're using the Spectrum Noir pens or mists or spritzes, it will not bleed through. And it's just a super white paper, which will also not add color to your design.
Right.
So just lots of things are going on with that Silky paper.
So this is great. So the 3 cutting dies for the flower were used to stamp, cut out, and then you go ahead and color those in with Spectrum Noir. Just a beautiful look.
Can I show what the Silky paper looks
Yeah,
like?
please
This
do.
is it. This is just the package. So there's 20 sheets
That's our
in there.
hot off the press
Yeah.
Silky papers. They're great. We use them for a lot. Memento is a great one to stamp. The Memento black ink was probably
Right.
used on this one.
And again, the layering. I just want to make sure that you can see that on the side, done with the all of the cutting
Right, it's
dies.
beautiful. I love that the paper was torn and then inked there. It almost looks like it gives it sort of a burned look, a really neat look. And all of the pieces that you see here on this center step card were done with the pattern pieces that come with that die cut card.
And on the inside, I love this look. Really garden on the inside.
Yeah, a garden edge. And I'm going to show you a little bit on how she got that look.
Okay.
She started, now with the stamp sets, they come with those stencils that we talked
Right.
about, the templates. This one, this stamp set comes with the template for the face that I showed you, but it doesn't, this
Okay.
one doesn't come with the template for the flower, so she had to create her own.
Okay,
So
so-
she started by stamping off the edge of the bottom of the inside of that card, and then she stamped again on a piece of scrap paper and cut it out so that she could use that as a mask. She didn't really have to cut out the bottom.
Right.
I did that, I just did it. Anyway, so you stamp that. I'm going to put another piece of paper down here because I'm going to stamp off the edge. I'm going to place that mask right back on top of that flower. Okay, I've got the stamp here that was used, and I'm going to ink that. I'm using Stays On in this case. The black Stays On. Ink it up real good.
It's interesting because that's really a large blossom, and to think of it in terms of taking the parts of it is really a nice idea.
Oh yeah. And then in this case, we're just going to stamp off the edges of it here. I want to make sure I've got that paper behind.
So you would always start in the center, obviously.
Because that's the one that's going to be, you want everything behind it. Oh, I messed up. Darn it, I thought I had it all. I didn't press hard enough on
I
the top.
see, yeah.
So I'm going to do it on the other side so I can try to redeem myself.
Are you? You feel the need to do that, do you?
I have to.
Okay. It would be helpful if this was one piece of layer of paper rather than
that
two.
too. But I'm going to press a little harder on the top, make sure I get that. Plus, I'm
Redemption
stamping-
is at hand.
I'm at an angle back here. Okay, so there. Now I've
Okay.
stamped that other one. That's just my scrap paper, and there's that there.
Right.
So you can see that it stamps behind it, so you don't ruin that front image.
Right.
And that's what Lene did.
There you go. And so there it is, again with stickles in the center and the greeting dazzles just beautifully positioned right above the blossoms. And
that's great. I love the stickles right in the center.
Yeah.
It's just a
Looks
very
nicely.
beautiful look.
Some,
Some
gold border
dazzles,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Now we're going to go to our last set. This too is blossoms and a butterfly, the stamp set. And as you've noticed, they are all the cling rubber. And this has exactly ones that match every single
Right.
one of the
This one, the
stamps.
stamp set does have that stencil in there, that masking stencil that can be used.
Yes.
And I love that it has the butterfly. This butterfly has a lot of detail and it's got that cutting die for it.
You ready
Let's
for
see how it
wonderfulness?
was used? Yeah.
Look at this. This is a 6x6 album. This is the Sarah Surface albums. They're naked, just like this. And they do come with sheet protectors inside. There are 5 of them.
Right, and this was using the white truffle paper pack
Right.
and some black cardstock to just gorgeous effect.
Yes, and this is the Zing embossing powder.
Yeah, this is the silver zinc. No, this is the the encrusted jewels.
Oh, whoops,
I'm
sorry.
Coming to it.
Thank you.
Coming to my mind.
Okay, so the encrusted jewels are used. So this happens to be the silver set, I am
Right,
sure.
the silver encrusted jewel sets, and so the silver embossing powder was used over here. Tinsel embossing
Look at
powder
that.
was used on the end of that. Yes,
Isn't that
beautiful?
gorgeous?
So that was just Versamarked, and you just dust it with the embossing powder and heat set it.
Now, Susan did use a black ink pad just to first ink the naked
The
album.
to ink the album,
And-
it picks it up really well.
right, but
and you
that's
have
beautiful.
to be sure to remove these posts, remove everything that's within the album before you do that,
Right.
and then emboss it. And then, of course, she's got that beautiful, this is the paper that has that lace right on it.
Right, and
printed
how
on it.
smart to use that as on the edge to let that fill in some space
Right.
design-wise.
But then for that large flower there, so she stamped the large flower on black cardstock, and then she stamped the smaller flower that sits in the center on black cardstock and the butterfly.
Right.
And then she embossed them, stamped and embossed with the, I'll bet she stamped and embossed first. I said cutting die
Right.
first. She stamped and embossed and then used the cutting die to cut them out, and she sprinkled them after they're embossed with the tinsel after they're heat embossed. Then sprinkle them with the encrusted jewels, some of the glass glitter, some of the other elements, and then heat from underneath with your
Right.
heat gun again to get that to reset.
And when Susan was creating this the first time, she kind of had too much of the encrusted jewels. It kind of obliterated the flower, so she scaled it back and just did pretty much the center area.
So
and
just a light
Right.
sprinkling of it.
And I love the fact that she used the dot paper for the leaves.
Isn't
It
that
just
cute?
creates just a difference, and enough that you see, oh, well, that's something
Right,
else.
something different. On the butterfly, if you look underneath here, she's actually done it twice.
Right.
So she did it twice, and she glued one down, and then she layered one on top.
And just put foam tape on the
Right.
body.
And the stamp actually gives you the antenna and the body there. So
And those are black jewel dazzles. And then on either side of the memories is another one. And then this is a ribbon and then the border
there's a little
dazzles
bit
right
of the
there.
border dazzle. I think this is from the tiny, probably
Oh,
the
tiny
tiny
word- tags and
Tiny
labels.
tags and labels template.
That's just
Gorgeous.
gorgeous,
It
just
is.
gorgeous. And then now, as I said earlier in the week, we talked about and showed the creative palette.
Right.
Well, when you have those sheets of paper, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to stamp on them, of
Right.
course.
So you're playing around, you're lifting off lots of prints, lots of different colors. And here are some leftover colors, and there you go. So you've got these, after you've got that large piece of paper, and here's one that was used, that comb design that we talked about. You can
It's
see
getting
these
close
comb-
to see
yeah.
that.
So in one of those designs, we used a comb across the creative palette, and then we
Yeah.
lifted a color. And here's what it is with the paints, with the distress paints.
And again, when you lifted the print, sometimes you had a streak across
Right.
it. Well, that's fine.
It
There
just
it
adds
is.
character. And then stamped and embossed with this bark, I think it's bark brown embossing powder, and then use the cutting dies to cut out these flowers and
So
just
the
start stacking.
large blossom with the center, then the medium size, you can see the leaves. There is the butterfly, the full butterfly, and Stickles in purple and
Purple
in
and
gold
so,
are used in this one.
Beautiful. A little bit around the edges there to add some sparkle.
And this is the sidestep die cut card. So I just think it's so fun to use it in this manner. So you've got the butterfly, you've got another blossom, single blossoms tucking right there.
Right.
This one has been duplicated, and you
then
can
just
see.
add some dazzles to give a quick greeting there. It's a nice little thank you.
And on the inside, again, using the pattern that's in the die cut cards.
And this is the first time I've noticed that this is the Kindred Spirits paper pack because it's got that lace down at the bottom, which is just perfect.
And you are the best in dazzles, but that's just yet another way to use the creative palette and these stamps and die cuts.
So combining our week of Webisode stuff.
And this is the last one we have, and what a different look, and how fun that the butterfly flutters from the front to the inside.
Right, so isn't that great? So taking your blank card, or not blank, first you're going to put your papers on your card. So these were stacked, layered, you've got the paper on there, and then you're going to set that cutting die on just the front part of your card to create a window.
So here, the last card, we use them individually. Here we're using them as a cluster, all three of the sizes. Notice how the leaves are really light green because they're, you know,
green even, I think they're gray.
Oh, that could be.
Or silver. Oh, what's a silver? Okay, this is from, these are the watercolor pencils.
Right.
So probably the red set. I haven't looked. I'm going to think it's the red set. And then the leaves were done with the silver, which comes with that set.
Okay.
So that's a really unique look.
It's very pretty.
And just colored in, and then use a paintbrush to blend them in a little bit.
Another thing that's going on here, and I guess, John, let's go in close again, because what you can see are these thin borders, and this is the thin line, the black thin line dazzles, and it just adds a nice touch and something that almost disappears because it seems like it's so much a part of it.
Right, but that's kind of a nice way to do that instead of matting. So you can mat on black cardstock, or you can or you can just add these.
Lay down the sticker either way. And on the inside of this card, as we showed you, the single little blossom and the rest of that butterfly. So as you can see, lots of things that you can do with the cutting dies and the matching stamps.
Right.
And you've got 3 choices. Choose one, choose them all, get them while they're hot.
Beautiful projects, and we will see you tomorrow.
Yeah, for our last day in our Stamp Camp Week of Webisodes.